Chair recognizes the honourable member for Fort Sioux.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I suppose the simplest way would be to say I have had the advantage of knowing what my colleague was going to say, and I support everything he says, and so I second it. And I do, but I'll do it in a more complicated fashion. When I was a practitioner, an early practitioner, in I guess that's in and about 1986, started practicing at the bar, and I had all these grand notions about justice and what I was going to do and accomplish. I was, and at the same time, trying to canvass to get into this place. And I went into one of the neighborhoods, and I met this man who runs the local bar, but he was quite well known, and he became a friend. So one day he was soliciting some funds from me because he needed to go away, he said, for an operation in the States. And he told me who were some of his benefactors, amongst which were some of the more popular lawyers of the day. I said, oh, I didn't know you knew so-and-so. He says, oh, yes, I serve on the jury all the time. Says, I always end up being the foreman. And I help him out from time to time with his cases. So, of course, I'm standing there in total shock. I say, this can't be in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. But the fact is, Mr. Speaker, that many people are, in the old days, in the old system, were perennially on jury duty. Every time you went down to the court, they were on jury duty, and they're specialists in jury. And if the police needed you to go on a coroner's jury, they always had a crew on their list. So, because the way the law used to be, or is still constituted, is that if there's a shortage of jurors, you can go out on Bay Street and press some people and say, look, I need some jurors up here to be on the coroner's court. And they sit and hear the case. So that's how it was in the old days. And then I had this experience, Mr. Speaker. I was in the court, and looks like the members getting carried away in something else again, right? But there I am in the court, and so the jury is hearing the case, and then the jury comes back with a not guilty verdict. And after the not guilty verdict comes in and the judge has dismissed the defendant and all the rest of it, one of the members of the jury walks up to a person and says, now, after finding him not guilty, he says, now, you don't do that again, you hear? So, the fact, though, Mr. Speaker, is that's how it used to be in the old days. Today, people take jury duty very seriously. It is, as the member said, when you sit on a jury, you're taking part in a very serious civic responsibility. And what is the responsibility of a citizen, Mr. Speaker? I would list them as this. First, to protect and defend the Bahamas. Secondly, to ensure the fiscal stability of the state. Thirdly, to participate in the civic life of the country. One of those duties as a citizen in participating in the civic life of the country is to register to vote and to participate in elections and referenda, to choose the government, and to make decisions with regard to the Constitution. Secondly, I would say to be involved in service on the jury. And how you get to serve on a jury is you have to register to vote, because the jury list is chosen from those who register to vote. And I've had people, when I've been campaigning door to door, who've said to me, I'm not going to register to vote because I don't want to serve on the jury. And many times people would come to me, even as a representative for the area, and say, I've been summoned to jury duty. Can you see if you can get me off jury duty? And my view is that you should always go and try to serve on the jury, because that's one of the great civic responsibilities of being a citizen of the Bahamas. Mm-hmm. And to be on a jury, that means you have to be Bahamian. So it's an integral part of being Bahamian, serving on a jury. I would also say that the Constitution, as you heard from the move of the motion, talked about Article 22G, in which the mover points out that the right to trial by jury is enshrined in the Constitution. I believe this actually required a challenge in the courts. And there is a famous ruling by Madam Justice Jones Sawyer, which reaffirmed the position that a trial on information, that is, if you are being tried for what is known as an indictable offense that goes before the Supreme Court, must be before a jury. In the United States, they've gone even further in their Supreme Court, and they have said that the jury must actually decide the sentence, that the function of the judge is restricted to determinations on the law and procedure, but the facts, the determination of the facts, and the actual sentence are supposed to be carried out by juries. And you see in the United States where they have what is now called the penalty phase of a trial after they do the trial itself, which determines the guilt or innocence of the individual. And the whole principle of trial by jury or trial of your peers is something which is now being celebrated in the UK, where the principle is said to have been enshrined first by the barons at Runnymede with the Magna Carta, which I believe is celebrating an anniversary this year, because I believe it was 1215 that it was first enshrined. I'm sorry? That's hundreds of years. Oh, yeah, hundreds. Is it 1,000? Yeah, it's a long time that it's been enshrined. I can't do the math, so don't ask me. But it's a long time, and it was at that that Magna Carta that just enshrined the fact that if you are going to be presented with an offense, that you should know what you're being charged with, that you should be heard before an impartial panel, and it should be generally a panel of your peers. I'm told they've now done the math. It's now 800 years. 800 years. And those of you who want to see the original document, I'm told that there are a couple of copies left, and you can go to the UK on your summer holidays if you can get a good fare and see the actual original document. But juries, therefore, have this important role in the civic life of our country. It is important, Mr. Speaker, for the selection process for juries to be open, fair, and transparent. One of the complaints that people have about serving on juries is too often they are called time and time again to serve on the juries, and they believe that it takes too much time away from their work. I know, again, in the old days that judges would then after you've served for a period of time, judges would say you're dispensed with service for a term of years to avoid that kind of thing happening. But this system, which they are now seeking to implement by allowing the parliamentary commissioner, in the companion bill, the parliamentary commissioner will now be able to add, when he is compiling the voters, he or she is compiling the voters' roll, to be able to collect electronic information about you. That is your email address, which is something which, of course, didn't exist before 10 or 15 years ago. So that now comes into the process. And everything can then be done electronically. You can be enrolled, your electronic address is there, and then they can use computers to determine who will serve on the jury panel. And many people actually come to enjoy the experience. If you remember, there is a well-known play which was just put on kind of reprised last year called 12 Angry Men. And it is the case where jurors retire and they are deliberating a case. And I'm told that often this happens even in juries here. People will come and you're on some important case and the guy says, look, I got a flight to catch to Miami. Let's bring this fella guilty so I could go. But there's always someone who sticks out to the end and says, no, we have to adjudicate this case, which is what happens in 12 Angry Men. And where everybody starts off at the start saying that the person is guilty, by the time the play unfolds and comes to its end, everyone has in fact reversed their position after having looked at the facts and the evidence judiciously and come to the opposite conclusion. There is also that story of a famous case here where involving some politicians, you know, where they said the jury came in 12-0, not guilty. But they determined to protect themselves by just having 11-1, so that when they saw the politician, they said, you know, I was the one who stood up for you. So these are the stories which come out of juries. Yes, everybody could say it's me. So, Mr. Speaker, I second this motion today. It is a small but important step that we take to try and modernize the legislation, to modernize our practices, to make the selection of juries more open, more transparent. In doing so, I would like to encourage all citizens first to register to vote, to understand that it's an important civic duty to participate in the life of the country in this way. And once you get on the voters' roll, you know that you also stand ready at any time to be called to serve on the juries. That too is an important civic responsibility of a citizen, to be able to support the system of justice and to participate in an open and transparent process and system. It is important to engage, I think, in public education on the question of the role that citizens play in their participation in the civic life. I myself started out, I guess, in 1988 with something which I call the Milo Butler Lectures on the Constitution. And this engaged a number of attorneys, some of whom are now prominent, Mr. Raul Maynard, Maurice Glinton, QC, Harvey Tynes, QC, the former Deputy Prime Minister and former Governor General, the Honourable Arthur Hanna, the former Prime Minister, Hubert Ingraham. And we went from island to island. And on each of those occasions, we used the opportunity to say to citizens who were gathered what the provisions of the Constitution are on these various subjects. And I think that as we go about on the National Development Plan, which is now unfolding, it is important for us to discuss these issues of the Constitution, the courts, how we can play a role in it. Our students should be able to know quite early on. As a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, it may be important in the school system while people are preparing for their BJC exams to be taught how the courts work, to go into the courts, see how juries are selected, see how trials work, see how judges operate and apply the law. And this would then give students an early grounding into the civic life of the country and how they can come at some later point to participate in that civic life. And I think that all of us should encourage our constituents as we interface with them what an important role it is to play in the civic life, both as voters and as people who are involved in the courts and in the criminal justice system. So with those words, and thank you, Mr. Speaker, I second the bill, and I would like to say to my own constituents in the Fox Hill constituency what an important role I think this is for them. I hope that these few words encourages their participation in the civic life of our country and in the wider administration of justice. So thank you, and I second the motion.